Imagine sitting across from someone who is perfectly charming. They smile at exactly the right moments, they say all the right things, and they seem incredibly confident, charismatic, and put together. But behind their eyes, there is absolutely nothing. No empathy, no guilt, no conscience. Society conditions us to believe that the most dangerous predators on Earth are locked away in maximum security prisons, wearing orange jumpsuits. But the truth is infinitely darker. The most dangerous people in our society are wearing tailored suits, running billion-dollar hedge funds, and making massive executive decisions that dictate the lives of thousands. They are your neighbors, your managers, and maybe even your friends. They suffer from a profound neurological lack of empathy. Yet our modern world doesn't lock them up. It rewards them. It gives them corner offices and massive bonuses. This is the chilling reality at the heart of human psychology. It forces us to ask a terrifying question. How do you spot a predator when they look exactly like a highly successful human being? And more importantly, once you learn the hidden signs of madness, will you ever be able to stop seeing them everywhere you look? Lesson 1. The Predator's Checklist. If you want to understand the darkest corners of human nature, you have to start with the concept of the mask. Most of us walk through life assuming a fundamental baseline of shared humanity. We assume that when someone hurts us, they feel at least a flicker of guilt. We assume that when someone sees suffering, they feel a pang of sympathy. But what happens when you remove that completely? What happens when a human being is born without the emotional hardware required to care about anyone but themselves? This is where we encounter the Hare Psychopathy Checklist. Developed by Canadian psychologist Bob Hare, this is the gold standard diagnostic tool used around the world to determine if someone is a clinical psychopath. It is a 20-item assessment that measures traits like glibness, superficial charm, a grandiose sense of self-worth, pathological lying, cunning and manipulativeness, and a complete lack of remorse or guilt. The checklist works on a point system. Each of the 20 traits is scored on a scale from 0 to 2. 0 means the trait doesn't apply at all, 1 means it applies somewhat, and 2 means it is a perfect match. If you score 30 or above out of a possible 40, you cross the threshold. You are officially categorized as a psychopath. But here is where the reality gets incredibly disturbing. When you read through these traits, superficial charm, extreme self-worth, the ability to lie without a physiological stress response, you aren't just reading the description of a serial killer. You are reading the exact resume of a highly effective modern operator. The terrifying realization is that psychopathy isn't just a switch that flips a person into becoming a murderer. It is an emotional blindness. A psychopath looks at human beings the way you and I look at a toaster or a bicycle. We are objects. We are tools to be used for their amusement, their advancement, or their gratification. When you apply this to your own life, it changes the way you view past traumas. Think about that toxic ex-partner who could lie to your face while swearing on their life. Think about the friend who seamlessly manipulated the entire social circle, leaving chaos in their wake without losing a single second of sleep. They weren't just being difficult. They might have been operating from a completely different emotional frequency. Understanding the checklist isn't about becoming paranoid, it is about protecting yourself. It is about realizing that not everyone operates with a conscience, and expecting a predator to suddenly feel bad for eating the sheep is a fundamental misunderstanding of nature. Lesson 2. The Corporate Psychopath. Once you understand the traits on the checklist, a deeply uncomfortable truth begins to emerge about the structure of our society. If you lack empathy, if you are aggressively charming, if you take terrifying risks without feeling anxiety, and if you have absolutely no problem firing thousands of people to boost a profit margin, where do you belong? You don't belong in a psychiatric ward. You belong on Wall Street. You belong in the boardroom. Our modern capitalist system, particularly in the highly aggressive corporate cultures of the US and the UK, does not punish psychopathic behavior. It inadvertently incentivizes it. When you look at the highest echelons of business, you find environments that actively reward ruthlessness. A normal human being feels a massive emotional toll when they have to lay off employees. A normal human being loses sleep over the environmental destruction caused by their supply chain. A psychopath doesn't. To them, these are just numbers on a spreadsheet. This makes them incredibly efficient, terrifyingly decisive, and highly attractive to shareholders who only care about the quarterly return. Take the infamous example of corporate raiders and chainsaw CEOs from the late 20th century. Men who would buy up struggling companies gut them, fire everyone, sell off the parts, and walk away with tens of millions of dollars while entire towns went bankrupt. They did this with a smile. They wrote books about how brilliant they were. To the rest of the world, it looks like greed. But psychologically, it is the manifestation of a brain that literally cannot process the pain of others. For you, navigating your career, this is a vital lesson in survival. You will inevitably encounter leaders who display these dark triad traits. When you realize that your boss might not just be a jerk, but might actually be structurally incapable of caring about your well-being, it changes your entire strategy. You stop trying to appeal to their better nature. You stop expecting loyalty in return for your hard work. Instead, you learn to manage upwards. You document everything. You protect your boundaries fiercely, and you understand that to a corporate psychopath, you are simply a means to an end. Recognizing this dynamic is the first step to escaping the emotional toll of working under someone who views you as expendable. Lesson 3: the madness industry and the danger of the DSM. But as we dive deeper into the psychology of madness, we have to look at the other side of the coin. If psychopathy is the extreme edge of mental illness, what about the rest of us? How do we define what is normal and what is crazy? This brings us to the ultimate authority in psychiatry, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or the DSM. This massive book is the dictionary of madness. It dictates what conditions are real, what gets covered by insurance, and what medications are prescribed to millions of people. But the history of the DSM reveals a deeply flawed and entirely human process. Decades ago, psychiatry was largely based on Freudian psychoanalysis, talking therapy. But the medical establishment wanted something more scientific, more rigid. They wanted to categorize human behavior exactly the way biologists categorize plants. So they created checklists. Suddenly, subjective human experiences were boiled down to bullet points. If you exhibit 5 out of 9 specific behaviors, you have a disorder. The problem is that human beings are incredibly messy, and the desire to categorize everyone has led to an explosion in mental illness diagnoses. We have pathologized normal human behavior. Childhood eccentricities, teenage rebellion, grief, and temporary anxiety have all been given clinical labels. We see a staggering rise in the diagnosis of childhood bipolar disorder and ADHD, often resulting in heavy medication for children whose brains are still developing. The madness industry is highly lucrative. Pharmaceutical companies benefit enormously when there are more disorders to treat. And while it is undeniable that severe mental illnesses are real and require medical intervention, we have to be incredibly careful about the societal urge to put everyone in a box. When we reduce human complexity to a checklist, we lose the nuance of the human experience. For you, this means taking a critical step back when evaluating your own mental health, or the mental health of your loved ones. Are you experiencing a clinical disorder, or are you just a human being reacting naturally to a highly stressful, unnatural modern world? Feeling deep sadness after a major loss isn't a pathology. It's love persevering. Feeling distracted in a world designed by tech companies to steal your attention isn't necessarily a brain defect. It's a predictable reaction to your environment. We must guard ourselves against the reflex to instantly medicalize every difficult emotion we face. Lesson 4: confirmation bias and the labeling trap. There is a psychological trap waiting for anyone who studies the minds of psychopaths and the checklists of mental disorders. It is a trap that Jon Ronson himself fell into while writing the book, and it is a trap you must avoid. It is called confirmation bias. Once you learn the 20 points of the psychopath test, a strange thing happens. You start seeing psychopaths everywhere. You go to a party, someone talks over you, and suddenly you think, grandiose sense of self-worth, lack of empathy. I'm talking to a psychopath. You start diagnosing your coworkers, your family members, and your politicians. You become an amateur psychologist, armed with a dangerous amount of partial knowledge. This is the seductive power of a label. When you slap a label on someone, it makes the world feel safer. It makes unpredictable human behavior feel organized and manageable. If your boss is just a psychopath, then you don't have to try to understand their complex motivations or their own hidden traumas. You have successfully put them in a box, locked the lid, and separated them from yourself. But doing this is incredibly dangerous. When we define someone entirely by their worst traits, when we reduce their entire existence to a clinical label, we strip them of their humanity. We stop seeing them as a person and start seeing them as a caricature. Ironically, this is the exact same psychological mechanism that the psychopath uses. A psychopath lacks the empathy to see the full humanity in others, reducing them to objects. When we gleefully diagnose everyone around us, shutting down our own empathy towards them, we are stepping into the very darkness we are trying to study. We have to recognize that human beings exist on a spectrum. Someone can be selfish without being a psychopath. Someone can be manipulative in a specific scenario because of their own desperate insecurities, not because they are fundamentally devoid of a soul. As you navigate the world, use your knowledge of dark psychology as a shield, not as a sword. Use it to protect yourself from genuine predators, but do not use it to alienate yourself from the flawed, complicated, and sometimes difficult people who make up the fabric of everyday life. Lesson 5. The beauty of anxiety and the empathy defense. If thinking about psychopaths, corporate predators, and the madness of society makes you feel uneasy, there is a profound silver lining you need to understand. During his journey into the world of madness, Jon Ronson experienced a moment of intense panic. Surrounded by talk of hidden predators and checklists of evil, he began to turn the lens inward. He started to worry. What if he was a psychopath? What if he was manipulating people for his book? What if his entire personality was just a mask? He lay awake at night, agonizing over his own morality, terrified that he might be one of the monsters he was investigating. But then, a realization hit him, a realization confirmed by the leading experts in the field. Psychopaths do not worry about being psychopaths. A true psychopath does not feel anxiety about their moral standing. They do not lie awake at night agonizing over whether they accidentally hurt someone's feelings. They do not question their own inherent goodness. Therefore, the very fact that you are capable of feeling anxiety about your character is the absolute proof that you are fundamentally healthy. Your anxiety, your guilt, your overthinking, these are not weaknesses. They are the undeniable evidence of your empathy. In a world that often rewards ruthlessness, it is easy to view empathy as a burden. It is exhausting to care. It hurts to feel the pain of others. But empathy is the anchor that keeps us connected to reality. It is the defining characteristic that separates a fully realized human being from an empty shell. The ultimate lesson of studying the darkest aspects of the human mind is a renewed appreciation for the light. It teaches us to embrace the gray areas of our own humanity. We are not checklists. We are not just a collection of symptoms to be categorized, medicated, and filed away. We are complex, irrational, highly emotional creatures. Yes, there are people out there who lack the capacity to care, and we must be vigilant against them. But the vast majority of people are just like you, stumbling through life, trying to do their best, carrying their own hidden burdens. Protect your empathy. Do not let a harsh world harden you into something cold and calculating. Your capacity to feel guilt, to feel sorrow, and to deeply connect with the struggles of others is not a flaw in your programming. It is the very essence of what makes life meaningful. It is your greatest defense against the madness of the modern world. In the end, diving into the minds of psychopaths doesn't just teach us about the monsters hiding in plain sight. It holds a mirror up to our own humanity. It reminds us that our anxieties, our guilt, and our messy emotions are the exact things that make us beautifully human. Empathy isn't a weakness. It's our greatest strength. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever encountered someone in your career or personal life that you suspect was completely devoid of empathy? How did you handle it? Drop your story in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you found value in this deep dive, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our next breakdown of the books that explain the hidden mechanics of our world. See you in the next one.